Hello everyone, and welcome to Winshuttle Transaction Advanced 1 training. I am Miia from ADSOTECH, your Winshuttle partner in the Nordics, and I'm here to guide you through our 3 training packages: Basic, Advanced 1, and Advanced 2. These packages are designed for new Winshuttle Transaction users with a developer license. We are now in the Advanced 1 training package, which includes multi-line recordings, reading from SAP, script linking, taking backups, and data validation. This is the fourth and last part of that package, concentrating on how to take backups and validate data. Let's dive in. First, how to take a backup of your SAP data. So we have a feature in Winshuttle Transaction that enables us to take an automatic backup of the current data in SAP before actually uploading our new data to SAP. It's most often used in scenarios where data can be updated repeatedly. So for instance, in materials management, where we might be updating data for the same materials every month or even every week at some point. So taking a backup every week or every month makes sense, at least for cases where we might notice a few weeks or months from now that 2 weeks prior we had wrong data going to SAP. Then we have the backup, so it's easy for us to go back to the last point in time where we had correct data in SAP. So we can simply upload that correct data back to SAP and buy ourselves some time to figure out what went wrong and what our data should be right now. But at least we have old data in SAP, but at least it's correct. When we use this option for taking a backup, it actually creates a separate Excel sheet every time we run the script. So a new Excel sheet pops up and the backup data is saved in that Excel sheet. This option only works with non-batch scripts. So you have to create your script with non-batch mode in order to use the backup option. Like linking or extended log, how you turn this option on is from the advanced run options. So in the run window, advanced run options on your right side, open that side panel and you will find a backup SAP data option in there. Alright, let's take a look at data validation as well, and then I will show you examples of both validation and backup. What data validation does for us, it ensures that our data is SAP compliant before we actually upload it to SAP. Very often, financial experts would like to make sure that their data is in fact correct before they actually put it into SAP. So they can use data validation, for instance. Or perhaps you have very large updates going into your SAP system, updates that are very crucial for your business, meaning that it is also very crucial that you get all of those updates done at the same time. Not to have 80% of it done in SAP and 20% come back with error messages, which you then need to figure out and run again at a later date. In these scenarios, data validation can help you. What data validation does, it actually runs the script. So it takes the values from your Excel template, puts them in the corresponding fields in SAP, but it does not save the data in SAP. In this way, we get all the error messages back that occur because of incorrect data. So an incorrect amount, meaning that there's something wrong with the amount in regards to the decimal points or something like that, or there's a typo in the currency key or something like that. We get those error messages back. If there's nothing wrong with the data, then our log message says success. This option for data validation is not automatically on for all scripts. It actually needs to be enabled per script explicitly. There are also some restrictions for using data validation. So it makes sense that it's by default it's off, and when you need and want to use it, then you go to the mapper and turn it on. So in the mapper, where you can find the filters button, you can also find the validation button. Simply click on that button and you have the option of validation off or validation on. Whenever you have that option on, so you choose validation on, you will see a difference in the run window. Right next to your run button, you will see a separate button that says validate. Now this is completely different from the backup option, for instance. If we have the backup option on for a specific script, then whenever we run that script, a backup is taken. There's no option of turning off the backup for this specific run. It's always on and the backup is always going to be taken. With the validation, we actually get a separate button. Now, if we decide to click run, the script will run as it normally would. It will actually put the data to SAP and save the data in SAP as well. But we don't have to do that directly. We can simply click on validate, which means that the script gets run, yes, but no data gets saved in SAP. We just get back a success message or an error message. And if everything's a success, then we can go back and click run and get the updates done in SAP as well. But since we have two different buttons, there's always a choice. Do I actually want to run validation, or do I want to actually run the whole script and do the update in SAP? So I always get that choice. I mentioned there are some rules to using data validation, or some restrictions, whatever you want to call them. In order for data validation to work for your script cannot have data updates on the very last screen of the recording. This is one of the big reasons why I always say that when you record, don't simply type in something in an SAP field and then directly go click save. Because then you will have a data update on the last screen of your recording, and that's not good. What you need to do instead is to, yes, of course, update the SAP field that you need to update. Great. But then do something else first before hitting save. Meaning, click back and get prompted to save in a pop-up window. Then that pop-up window is the last screen in your recording. Or navigate to a different tab, for instance, and then click save. Because the navigation creates a new screen in your recording. You don't do any updates in that screen, so you're fine to click save directly from there. Your recording or your script can only have one single commit code or commit action in it in order for data validation to work. Commit codes mean saving actions. Most SAP transactions work exactly like this, so there's only one saving action, and that's the very, very end of the transaction. So that's fine. But some transactions, as an example, PA30 transaction, it saves several times during the run. It requires you to save different info records after you have updated that particular info record. So you cannot simply, get through everything and only save at the end. But somewhere in the middle you need to save, and then you can move on. Then you need to save, and then you can move on again. If your transaction works like that, then you won't be able to use data validation. And of course, as a rule, test your validation as well. As my rule of thumb, I always say that create your script first and test it separately. Of course, when you create the script, you might already have the idea in your head that we will use data validation for this. So create the script and accommodate the script to the data validation rules and restrictions. But when you do the mapping Don't worry about validation at that point yet. Simply do the mapping and test your script, simply by running it a couple times. If the script seems to be working just fine, then go back to the mapper, enable the validation, save your script of course, and then test the validation as well. Are you getting success messages? And when you get error messages, are they the type of error messages that you expect to have with your problematic data and things like that? Just see that the validation works. It works if you have considered all the rules that we have for data validation and all the restrictions. If all of that is in place, then your validation will be fine. But you can never be too sure, so do some testing with the validation as well. Also check in SAP that your validation run does not update the data in SAP. If your data gets updated in SAP through a validation run, then there's something wrong with your script. Probably some of the data validation rules and regulations have not been abided by. Couple more limitations that we have with data validation. GUI scripting will not accept data validation at all. Linked scripts will not be fine with data validation either. Separate scripts, fine, but linked scripts, validation is not able to go through the linked chain of scripts. If you have multiple loops in your script, if they're inside each other, then it's fine for data validation, but if they're unnested, then it's not fine anymore. And data validation will not work. Like I said, we cannot have multiple saves in that transaction in SAP. And then for all those finance people, it's good to know that for multi-line data, the data validation is not 100%. Like I explained before, data validation will go to each SAP field and fill in the data in each of those fields. What that means is it's checking each of the fields individually. So it's checking header data fields and line item fields separately. And what this amounts to is the fact that validation is not able to pick up if you have any balance errors in your data, meaning that your debit and credit don't match. Of course, within Excel, you can build your own checkup for that. So you can build in calculations and formulas that will tell you if your debit and credit don't match for a specific document. But data validation will not catch that. In SAP, when we try and save the document, SAP checks for balance errors. But it doesn't do that before that. And that's why data validation with Winshuttle doesn't catch it either. Because data validation is not going to try and save the document, so we don't catch the balance errors either. But like I said, you can build those in to your Excel template with formulas and things like this. Alright, example is as I promised. Let's open this script. Again, a very simple MM02 script. Again, updating the weights and the material description and things like that. So first with the backup. Here in Advanced Run Options, Backup SAP Data. Whenever I do changes in Advanced Run Options, I want to click Save, just to be on the safe side. Let's take a look at the Excel file, just so I can make sure what it looks like. Yes, the data looks fine. Let's go with that. And there we go. Updates done in SAP just fine, as expected. I also have extended log visible here, and that gives me the same information. What is brand new here in my Excel file is the second sheet that I have right here. BK for backup, the date and time. If you look at that, you will notice that this was the previous data we had in SAP. So before we did the updates that I have in sheet 1, this was the data we had in SAP. So it's printed here as my backup file. And of course Winshuttle prints it here in the same columns and in the same order as I have it here in sheet 1 as well. So column B for the description, column C for basic material, and so on. If I run the script again, I will get another backup sheet here, and based on the name here, date and time, I will know which one is the most recent one, and so on. Great, so that's how backup works. And again, as a reminder, when I, as the script creator, decide that backup option is needed for this script, I put the option on. The users that are using the script will not have any possibility of deciding whether to take a backup or not. If I have decided that the backup is needed, then the backup will be taken every single time the script is run. It doesn't matter if we run the script for 4 rows, 1 row, 255 rows, a backup will always be generated as a new sheet in my Excel file. Of course, at some point you can start deleting the older backups if you wish, but whenever I run the script, a new backup is always taken. All right. For data validation then. We can have backup and data validation on at the same time, but for now let's take off backup and extended log as well. Great. Now, turning on data validation, that happens in the mapper, update mapping. Over here, both in expert and basic view, I have validation button. Click that and turn validation on. Get out of the mapper if that's the only change you want to make. And here we go. I see the validate button and I see the run button. I can always decide which button to use, whether to actually do the updates in SAP or just to run the validation. My normal log message will now be in column G, and Winshuttle has decided that H would be a good place for my validation log. Let's check that in Excel. Yes, I guess those would be fine. I would actually prefer to have G for my validation log and H for my normal log message, so I will change them. That should be H and that should be G, like so. All right, now we can run. Do we want to? Let's change the data around a little bit. All right, we have good example data, some test data right here, and we can try out validation. So this is just like running the script, except nothing gets really changed in SAP. Didn't have any mistakes in the data and things like that, so my validation log says success. Now, do remember that at this point nothing is changed in SAP, so this data is still only in Excel, not in SAP. So I need to go back and do a proper run for that script in order to get this new data actually updated in SAP. And there we go. Now we have in column H the normal log message saying that the material was changed. So validation option is something that you can, if it's on, you can always decide whether to use it or not. It's not available for all scripts, so it cannot always be turned on. But if it can be turned on with the rules and limitations that we went through, then it can be very good option for you to give your end users. But it's not always needed. Some people like it more than others. Some people actually like running the validation first and then actually running the script. And some people just prefer running the script directly, and then if they get error messages, they will check those error messages separately. Both ways are just fine. What you need to consider as the creator of the script: do your users need the option of doing a validation run, or are they just fine with running this particular script directly to SAP and then possibly checking out the error messages as separate tasks? And for the backup option, if you, as the creator of the script, turn it on, then your end users don't have an option. When they run the script, they will always create a backup. Alright, that concludes the last part of our Advanced 1 package for Winshuttle transaction. When you feel comfortable with the loops, linking, etc., you should check out our next training package, Advanced 2, which will cover topics like adding conditions and using long text fields. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining.